Welcome to What Really Matters podcast, Everyday Spirituality with Karen Wyatt. Thanks for joining me here today. This episode I'm recording is actually a little later than it's supposed to be. I've really been working on this subject all week, and I've had a hard time deciding what I wanted to say and what the message of this episode needed to be. So I've been contemplating and journaling this topic, because I want to address what is happening right now in the here and now, the beginning of February 2026 here in the US, where we are witnessing horrific scenes that are unfolding day after day as immigration control removes people from their homes, from their jobs, people without criminal records, separates families, literally disappear people who have been sent to countries that they're not from. There are so many people missing whose whereabouts are unknown, families completely devastated and torn apart who do not know the status or the whereabouts of their loved ones. Communities have been torn apart. And as we know, innocent people have also been killed in the act of protesting the violence that is happening in their own communities. It has just been overwhelming for all of us, I'm sure, to witness what is happening. And we're seeing it unfold almost in real time through social media. We're seeing videos of what's happening on the streets, and it's so horrifying and so appalling. My mind almost finds it hard to believe, and yet I know it's happening. I know it's true. I know it's real. And I've struggled with how to carry this, how to carry all the grief, all the anger, all the pain, the sadness, even the disbelief, the shock, and the shame of what is happening before our own eyes in our own country. And one thing I've come to realize, it's not as if this behavior is something new. It may feel new to me because I haven't witnessed it in this way so directly in the past, but I realize there are marginalized communities in our country who have been experiencing this kind of treatment since the very beginning, since the very first settlers arrived on this continent. And so I realize, while I've had the privilege of being out of the loop in a way, of not being a witness every day in my everyday life to this kind of treatment for certain people in our society, no longer is my head buried in the sand. I think that's true for many of us, again, who have, we've had the freedom and the privilege to be unaware of what some people live with every day for generations throughout their entire lives. So, as I've said before in a previous episode, we are awake now. We are aware. We are seeing it. We're witnessing it, and we are feeling the pain of it. So this is a very important moment when each one of us is waking up with pain and dismay and shock, fear, grief, sadness, anger, as I said before. We're waking up with all of those emotions rising up within us and trying to figure out what we can do, how we can behave, how to proceed. What's the next best thing, the next right step that we can take to make a difference and to help in our communities? There are people living in communities where literally they're seeing, I have friends and family who are seeing immigration vehicles on their streets every day, and who have witnessed with their own eyes their neighbors being taken out of their homes or snatched from work or from a hospital or from a school. And so some of the people close to me are right in the middle of it, are seeing it in their own day-to-day life every day. I am not witnessing it around me in my life, I'm seeing it through social media because it isn't yet happening right where I live. Not that it won't happen in the future. So I've come to realize that I am shocked by the level of violence, the level of hatred, the level of inhumanity, the level of disregard for other people that is unfolding before our eyes. Although, why would I be shocked? Because as a student of history, I can look back at any time through the ages of the history of humankind, and these same types of atrocities have occurred over and over and over again. It's actually a very human thing for us to mistreat and feel hatred for people who are different from us. That is perhaps part of the epitome of being a human, in a sense, is that we have an innate distrust and fear of anyone and anything different from us that we don't understand. And at least let's say that is innate in our lower consciousness, for our egos, for our small selves, to respond that way. And as I've said, it's played out over and over again throughout history. Read any history book about any period of time in the existence of humankind, and you will read these same stories over and over again throughout history. But I think perhaps some of us have fooled ourselves a little bit to believe that as a civilization, as a society, we have advanced beyond primitive behaviors. We've advanced in our consciousness to a place where most of us would not treat someone else in this way. But we are part of a collective. And even though we as individuals feel, I would not behave that way, I would not choose that action, we're part of a collective that still exists at that lower level of consciousness that's still capable of this type of horrific behavior. So as members of humankind, we have to take some responsibility for the collective because we belong to the whole of humankind. And we have to be able to look at the behavior of some members of our collective and feel accountability for that, just as human beings. So for me, that's what I've been struggling with. How do I maintain a sense of some sort of responsibility as a human for how all of my fellow humans behave? How do I behave? And how do I even think about and contemplate the people that are capable of doing these acts of evil and perpetrating them against other human beings? To be honest, I've gone through feelings of despair and depression, of a sense of hopelessness at times, and wondering, how will we ever move forward? Have we ever moved forward in history? And how can we move forward from where we are right now? And what can we as individuals do about it? And I've talked about this before in other episodes as well. But I am acutely aware of the fact that even when we are awakened to the evil and hateful behavior of other people, we see it, we can name it, we call it out, we judge it, we denounce it, we stand up for the rights of the people who are being oppressed and being harmed. So even though we can recognize it and witness it in other people, we ourselves may also be feeling hatred, vindictiveness, and a lack of caring for the perpetrators of the violence. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying that we should not hold accountable those people who are committing acts of violence and hatred, but what I've been struggling with is my own inner motivation for wanting to hold them responsible and where that comes from. And I'm acutely aware in my own life that if I begin hating people who hate, I am contributing overall to, let's say, the total load of hate that exists in our society. I'm contributing to the energy of hatred if my actions, my thoughts, my behavior are motivated by hatred. And while I can be appalled and dismayed and disgusted about the behaviors of people who are hateful, what I do not want to feel is hatred for those people, because suddenly I'm doing what they are doing. I am judging someone else as being different from me. I'm separating them off as other than me, and I'm justifying hating them and wishing evil upon them, which is what they are doing. And I don't want to be in the same category. I don't want to behave in the same way. I don't want to be adding to the overall load of hatred, this cloud of hatred that exists over our society right now. I don't want to contribute to the hatred. But how do I not? How do I make sure I'm not adding to the hatred of the people themselves when I am feeling anger and disgust and dismay over their actions, over the things that they are doing? So these are the thoughts that have been swirling around in my head this past week, and how to talk about it. How do we denounce the behavior of a group of people who are acting from hate, but not venture into hatred ourselves as we denounce that behavior? So I've been struggling with finding this razor's edge, this very delicate balance of how to manage my own emotions and thoughts, my own inner life, and how to keep myself on this narrow path, the narrow third path, I guess I would call it, of not slipping into hatred myself. And then I heard a recording of one of the monks who is participating in the Walk for Peace. I've talked about this before. The monks who are walking from Austin, Texas to Washington, D.C., 2,300-mile walk for peace. Their entire aim and their entire goal is to spread peace. And they're walking with gentleness, humility, without trying to evangelize or convert someone, without judgment, simply walking themselves on behalf of peace. And I heard one of the monks talk about something that had happened to them on the walk that day, when an individual driving a big truck drove past them slowly, shouted curses at them, and intentionally revved the engine of the truck to produce thick black diesel smoke that enveloped the monks and caused them to cough as they were walking along. So it was an act of hatred, an act of disrespect, a terrible thing for someone to do to these very harmless, innocent monks who were simply walking for their own belief in peace. Someone without peace in his own heart behaved in such an ugly, negative way toward the monks. And it seems to me that that's a fairly rare occurrence. At least the videos I'm seeing are thousands of people coming out to honor the monks, lining the road, waving to them, bringing them flowers, bringing them food, and praying with the monks, receiving blessings from the monks. It's been a really beautiful thing to behold. So this was the first story I had heard of anyone behaving in a hateful manner toward the monks. And yet the monk who was talking about it, he said, did we respond by cursing ourselves, by shaking our fists, by showing anger to the person who treated us in that way? And he said, and And he laughed and he said, no, if we were to do that, we would not be able to continue the walk for peace, because that would not be focused on peace. And that is why we are here. So I was just struck with the equanimity of these monks in the face of being treated negatively and treated badly by someone, and also their devoted attention to their mission, which is to walk for peace. And the way they managed it when someone approached them with hatred is simply to keep walking and to keep smiling and to keep generating peace in their hearts. And he admitted, of course, we have emotions, we feel the emotions, we have thoughts, but we are not identified with those emotions or those thoughts. Our emotions come and go, our thoughts come and go. We allow them to be present, we feel them all, and yet we remain devoted to the walk for peace. We just keep walking one step after another with our focus on peace. And that for me seemed to spell out the answer for my dilemma. How do I behold what's happening, not bury my head in the sand again, not try to bypass it or run away from all the pain that's existing in our world, but to continue to behold it, continue to feel all of the emotions that are rising up within me, the anger, fear, disgust, dismay, helplessness, grief, all of those feelings that I'm feeling inside of me, allow them to be present, but to remember I am not those feelings. They do not define me. I am a higher consciousness being who is experiencing these emotions and experiencing the thoughts that go through my head, but they are not me. And I do not act based on those emotions or those thoughts. Suddenly, that became so clear to me. And I could see how I need to respond. I need to allow myself to keep feeling everything I'm feeling. I need to allow myself to witness it and see it and be aware of what's happening. I need to continue to think about what I could do to make things better. But in my higher self, I need to be motivated by love, not hatred. I need to act out of love for everyone who's oppressed, everyone who's been harmed, every person who is in the path of this kind of violence or hatred. I have love for them. And I say this very carefully because it's likely to be misunderstood. I can also have compassion for the perpetrators of the violence, because without a doubt, some of those people are not very aware of what they are doing. Some of those people are living in their own state of fear, their own state of grief and pain. They are acting out negative impulses they find inside of them. They're identifying with their negative emotions. They are living from that place of negativity. That's what makes them capable of doing violence on other humans. And I have compassion for the state of being that they are in, yet I still hold them accountable. I still want them to be brought to responsibility for their actions. I'm not saying in any way that they should be excused for how they have behaved or what they have done, but I have a compassion for where they are, that they are lost. They are lost within lower consciousness, and they are unable to make better choices. They're unable to act from their better angels, let's say that. And that's a very sad thing. So I have compassion, but that does not mean in any way that I'm excusing what they do or saying that they should not be held accountable, because I'm not saying that at all. But I can look at their acts of hatred and not hate the people doing the acts of hatred. And that is the place, that's the delicate balance that I believe we need to maintain. We need to be able to feel all of our own feelings, but we also need to be on the third path of higher consciousness, where our own actions are motivated by love, not by hate. And we can feel hate, we can be aware of hate arising within us, but we don't allow it to dictate how we behave and how we treat other people. We act from love, and we do what is needed to protect the oppressed, to protect those being harmed, whatever that might be in our own communities, in whatever way we can step up. Or if we don't live in a community that's under attack right now, we make donations to the communities where that's happening. We send our love, we send our thoughts and prayers. We hold vigil, we hold space for all the people suffering in those communities. But we hold it with love. We don't hold it with hatred. I hope that makes sense to you. I hope you can understand the difference when your motivation can come from this higher place of love. You don't sink down into this deep trap of despair, anger, and vengeance, that it's like a swirling whirlpool or eddy that pulls you further and further down, down, down. And it's not helpful. It doesn't benefit anyone. So by seeking out that third path, remembering our higher selves, our better angels, our higher consciousness, remembering that always that is the path of love, and staying in that place of bringing more love and more light into the dark places of the world. Adding more hatred does not make anything better in this world. We need to add love. We need to add our light and bring our light into these situations as much as possible. So I am saying that this is where I'm at right now, what I'm working on, what I'm learning about and contemplating. The Buddhist monks and their response to negative treatment have really inspired me and are helping me think clearly about this. But I'm also not judging you. If you're in a place where the feelings of hatred rising in you are so strong, you cannot imagine having compassion for someone who commits atrocities against another human. I get that. I totally understand that. So I'm not judging anyone who listens, who says, that's not where I am. I am not at that place. I'm telling you, I haven't been at this place for very long. And this is a new way for me to be thinking. But I am telling this to you simply because that's what this podcast is about. I'm sharing my journey and the things that I'm learning. But please don't take this as any kind of judgment, because your path is yours and you will discover whatever is the right way for you. You will learn whatever you need to learn on your path. And I have no judgment about that. But I did want to share another thing that came to my mind just this morning as I was preparing to record this, which is the story of the Milgram experiments, the Milgram obedience experiments that were done back in the 1960s. And you might have heard of this. They set up a hypothetical situation where it was supposedly a learning experience where people were in two separate rooms, but one person was controlling how the other person in the other room learned something new. And when the other person in the room made a mistake, the person in the first room was to administer a small electric shock that would notify the other person they'd made a mistake and to see if it would help them learn. And each time the person made a mistake, the shock that was delivered became more and more intense. And so all of this, it was not a real scenario. It wasn't really happening, but the person administering the shock didn't know that. There were actors in the other room who were responding as if they had been shocked, who would scream out in pain, who would sometimes cry. And the person administering the shock was told each time, you have to give them the next higher level of shock. You have to move it up. You have to step it up. That's the experiment. This is what we're doing. That's what you have to do. And this study found that 65% of the people administering shocks kept increasing the intensity of the shock, no matter how much the person in the other room screamed or cried out in pain or begged them not to do another shock. They continued to increase the intensity of the shock because they were being told to do so by the study organizer. 65% of people. So they knew, again, it wasn't really happening, but they thought it was. They knew they were doing harm. They knew administering the shock was causing pain and suffering to the other person, but they also knew it was an expectation. It was part of their job. It was what they were there to do. It's what they had been hired for the study to do that. So they continued to do it. They caused harm to another person and complied with the directions of the study organizer simply because they were told to do so. 65% of people, and I think that's very instructive because these were not all people who were ogres, who were criminals, who were necessarily filled with hatred. They were simply ordinary, everyday people who were acting from their lower consciousness, obeying orders, complying with what they were told to do in spite of the fact that it caused harm to another person. The other 35%, which I think is this is the group we're aspiring to be, said, I will not do it. I will not cause harm to that person. I will not cause them pain. And I don't care what the repercussions are to me. I don't care if you make me suffer or do something to me. I am not going to be responsible for harming another person. So the other 35% refused to continue the study when they realized their actions were causing harm. So this is pretty instructive for us because think about it. Are we part of the 65%? And, are we part of, let's say, the 65% who witnesses an immigration agent causing harm? Are we part of the 65% who would also cause harm to that agent? Would we cause harm to a person who is being hateful? Would we ourselves sink to that same level and cause harm to that person, justifying it in our own minds? Or if someone told us to harm them, would we do so? So the challenge is to be part of the 35%, the people who operate from higher consciousness, from their better angels, from their soul, from the higher wisdom aspect of themselves that is capable of carrying and maintaining and expressing love regardless of the situation that exists in the external world. And how can we make sure we are part of that 35% that we would refuse? We would refuse to do harm to any other person, even a person who themselves are doing harm, unless, let me put it this way, unless it was necessary to do harm to stop them from harming others. Sometimes it is necessary. Sometimes violence is necessary if we're going to stop someone from doing harm to others. And that's a reality that we have to live with. But let us say still, we would be stopping that person out of love for the oppressed more than out of hatred for the person doing the act of violence. Again, I just have to reiterate that the importance of being at a place where you can see it clearly. And my love for the good of the whole says, in this case, harm has to be done to the person who's harming others, because it's the only way to stop them. It's the only way to prevent more harm. So I'm trying to be very careful about how I clarify things here. But you see, you could be the one who says harm may have to be done to this hateful person, but that could be a conclusion that comes from love, from fierce love that says no. Love says the good of the whole, the good of the innocent, the good of the oppressed matters. And we will stand up for it no matter what we have to do to stop the hateful from committing violence. So I hope this is making sense. I am not saying that from love we are pacifists at every turn, because sometimes love demands that we take action, that we take steps, that we may do something that harms a person who is causing harm for others. But again, it is motivated by love, not just by hatred. And I hope that makes some sort of sense. I'm sure I'll get some pushback or criticism for saying these things, but I just wanted you to hear the thoughts that are on my mind right now. And one more little story that came up that I read when I was writing the book Wild and Holy, and did a lot of research on St. Francis, who impressed me so much on our trip through Italy, all the writings and teachings from St. Francis, and a couple of stories about St. Francis. One that during the Crusades, Francis actually wanted to stop the Crusades. He went out in the front lines of the battle to ask the soldiers to stop the Crusades and stop fighting. And he walked across the battle line and met with a sultan that was commanding the forces on the other side, walked up to him, walked right into the enemy camp, and unarmed, essentially, with the intention of bringing love into that enemy camp, met with the Sultan. For 3 days. They sat and talked with one another. And Francis wasn't trying to convert this Muslim man to Christianity or Catholicism. Francis was simply connecting with him human to human, and they sat and talked for 3 days. The Sultan was so impressed, really enjoyed his conversation with Francis. They essentially parted as friends because they met on this human level of compassion where they understood one another. And again, these men essentially were sworn enemies on different sides of a conflict. Francis had this meeting with the Sultan. He walked away having connected with the Sultan. Now, it did not stop the crusade from happening. It didn't change the battle that was unfolding. But it changed something in the Sultan. It changed something in the people who witnessed it, even though the battle still took place. But Francis acted from love and from courage, not from hatred, in order to walk across the battle line and spend 3 days with the Sultan. And there's another story of Francis very early in his ministry. Francis had this way of connecting with and communicating with animals. He was once called to a nearby village that was besieged by a wild wolf in the forest that had been attacking villagers, killing children, creating a lot of mayhem, and the villagers were terrified. They were afraid to leave the village and go out into the forest because of this wolf, and they weren't sure what to do about it. They had sent out groups of men to try to attack the wolf, and the wolf was so powerful, it had overcome the men and killed several of them. So the villagers were terrified and didn't know what to do. And Francis immediately walked into the woods and approached the wolf. Francis he had this way with animals, as we know from the sermon to the birds. But Francis understood the wolf is hungry and the wolf is killing in order to have food to eat, and asked the villagers to find a way to leave food for the wolf every day so that the wolf could eat. And that assured them the wolf will never attack you again if you simply place food in this area, this place where the wolf can find it. And again, like, that may just be a fable, a story that was told, but the mentality is what I wanted to talk about. The fact that Francis didn't decide to go kill the wolf. He didn't approach the wolf with fear or hatred. He approached the wolf with love and was able to find a solution and to find a path through the fear and through the terror that had been happening. And I think if there is a path forward for any of us, for our society, through this place where we are right now, and we cannot see that path right now, we're in a pretty terrifying place. We cannot see what is going to change, how it will change. But I am certain that that will be a path carved by love, not a path carved by hatred. And so that is reminding me to stay on the path of love, to keep my focus. Like those monks who are walking, I am walking for love. I'm walking every day, every step for love. I'm going to keep my focus there. And no matter how much hatred comes at me, no matter how much violence comes at me, I will not lose my sight of love. I will not lose my focus on love. I may have to act in ways that are frightening and scary and angry, and take steps to protect people around me. But the motivation for those steps will be from love, not from hatred, from fierce love that can do the right thing in the face of violence, in the face of hatred, in the face of fear. So that's what I'm working on this week. And I just wanted to share those thoughts with you. And I look forward to hearing what you think about that. So I will be back hopefully in 2 weeks with another episode for you. And until then, remember that we're here for love. That is the path. That is the next right step, the next right thing. Stay with your focus on love. And because we're focusing on love, it means we are also inviting grief into our lives, because they come together hand in hand. So face your fear. Be ready for whatever life brings us next. And this is quite a ride that we're on right now. And don't forget to just love each and every moment of your very precious life. Bye-bye.